Divorced pregnant woman trapped in a cabin in the woods on Halloween night. Velda sat on the cold wooden floor, her hands pressed against her round belly. The fire in the cabin was almost out, throwing weak orange light across the walls. Outside, the wind screamed through the trees. Snow hit the windows like pebbles. Her breath came fast and uneven as the lights blinked once, then went out completely. The generator had stopped again. She reached for her flashlight, but it was dead. The only sound left was the storm and the steady pounding of her heart. Then came a knock at the door. 1, 2, 3. Slow and heavy. Velda froze. Her fingers shook as she reached for the kitchen knife beside her. From outside, a voice called out, low and tired, "Please. I need help. My car broke down." She looked toward the door, her chest tightening. No one should be this deep in the woods tonight. Not in this storm. Not on Halloween. Velda stood slowly, staring at the handle. Should she open the door, or keep it locked? What would you do if you were Velda? Alone, pregnant, and trapped on Halloween night? Tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow, we'll drop another story you won't want to miss. Your support helps us bring you more powerful stories like this one. Come with us to the very beginning. The road to the cabin had been long and quiet, the kind of drive that made Velda feel both free and forgotten. Her old SUV groaned through the rough path leading to the woods near Millinocket Lake in Maine. The leaves had turned brown, the air cold enough to sting her skin when she stepped out. She looked exhausted, her dark circles deep, her lips dry, and her body heavy from both pregnancy and heartbreak. The silence around her felt endless. She wanted peace, but peace had come with too much emptiness. Velda had chosen this cabin because it was cheap. The real estate agent barely looked her in the eye when she signed the papers, mumbling that few people stayed long in that place. She brushed it off as superstition. All she needed was rest, a few weeks to think, to prepare for her baby, and to forget her ex-husband's face. The first night was cold. The generator hummed unevenly, and she could hear strange cracks and whispers in the walls. The locals at a gas station had warned her to stay away from Baxter Forest during October. They said people went missing there, the lost ones of the woods. Velda laughed it off. But as Halloween approached, laughter became harder to find. The air grew colder. The nights longer. The silence heavier. Something about the forest felt aware of her presence, as if it watched and waited. By the time October 31st arrived, she was ready for one quiet night. Just one. But that night, peace never came. The wind changed. The generator stopped. The knocking started. She held her breath, knowing the night she had feared most was finally here. Velda sat stiff in the rocking chair, eyes locked on the wooden door that shuddered under the weight of another knock. The sound was sharp, deliberate, almost polite at first, then urgent, almost desperate. Her breath fogged the cold air. The fire had dimmed to a faint orange glow, throwing shadows that danced across the log walls. She hesitated. No one should be out here. Not at this hour. Not on Halloween night. The knocking came again, louder this time. Her hands trembled as she gripped the armrest. Every instinct screamed to stay quiet, to pretend she wasn't home. But a small voice inside, the same one that refused to let fear rule her life anymore, whispered, "What if someone really needs help?" Slowly, she rose and crept toward the door. The wind outside howled like a living thing, rattling the cabin's loose panels. She pressed her ear against the cold wood. Through the roar of the storm came a man's voice, weak, strained, nearly swallowed by the rain. "Please, help me. My car slid off the road." Her heart twisted. She knew that stretch of road, narrow, slick with mud, nearly invisible once the fog rolled in. She glanced toward the window, but all she could see was blackness, rain hammering against the glass like pebbles. Velda hesitated one more second, then unlatched the door. The wind slammed it open. A gust of rain rushed inside, chilling her skin instantly. On the porch stood a man in a drenched jacket, his face ghost pale, lips cracked from the cold. His eyes, grey and hollow, seemed to flicker in the candlelight. "Thank you," he gasped, stumbling in. "I thought I was done for." Velda helped him to a chair by the fire and handed him a blanket. "You shouldn't be driving out here tonight," she said softly. He gave a faint smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Didn't plan to. Roads around here, they have a way of leading you places you don't expect." She frowned, unsure how to respond. His words hung strangely in the air. The man rubbed his hands near the fading fire. "You live here alone?" Velda tensed. "Just me. For now." He nodded, gaze drifting toward the window, toward the woods. His shoulders stiffened. "This area, it's not safe after dark." A flicker of irritation rose in her. "I've heard all the small-town ghost stories. I'll be fine." The man didn't argue. He simply stared at the flames, whispering almost to himself. "The forest remembers. Especially tonight." Velda looked at him carefully. His voice carried an old weight, something between grief and warning. The candlelight trembled across his face, and for the briefest second, his outline blurred, as if the light passed through him instead of over him. She blinked. He looked solid again, dripping water onto the rug. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe her eyes were playing tricks in the dim light. The storm roared louder, shaking the roof beams. The power flickered once, twice, and then went out completely. Darkness swallowed the room, broken only by the faint orange pulse of dying embers. Velda groped for her matches, her breathing uneven. She struck one and lit a candle. The flame quivered to life, and in that trembling glow, the man's face appeared inches away from hers. He was smiling now. Too still. Too calm. "Thank you for letting me in," he murmured. "Not many do." Velda's pulse pounded in her ears. The air felt heavier, colder. "You should rest," she whispered, taking a cautious step back. He nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. "Yes. Rest, before it starts." Her voice cracked. "Before what starts?" But the man didn't answer. He turned back toward the window, and somewhere beyond the glass, through the rain and wind, Velda thought she saw movement. A faint figure in the tree line. Watching. The candlelight flickered again. When Velda looked back at the man, his chair was empty. Only the wet footprints remained, leading straight to the door. The candle flame struggled against the draft, flickering as though afraid of the dark itself. Velda stood frozen in the middle of the room, her heartbeat loud enough to drown the storm outside. The stranger was gone, or so she thought. The floor creaked behind her. She spun around. Nothing. Only the rocking chair swaying slowly, as if an invisible hand had just let go. Her breath caught in her throat. The temperature had dropped again, sharp and biting. She could see her breath in pale bursts, drifting toward the ceiling. The cabin, once her fragile refuge, now felt alive, watching. From somewhere deep within the walls came a faint whisper. At first it sounded like wind sneaking through the cracks, but soon it formed words. Velda strained to hear. "Velda." She stumbled back, knocking over a small lamp. The whisper grew louder, layered, like multiple voices speaking through the same mouth. The door slammed shut on its own. The window panes rattled violently. Her trembling hand reached for the knife she kept on the table. The blade reflected the quivering candlelight as she turned slowly toward the sound. The whisper returned, clearer this time, closer. "Why did you leave him?" Velda froze. Her stomach knotted. That voice, that tone, it was the same one her ex-husband used in their final fight. The same accusation that haunted her sleepless nights. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. "Who's there?" A low groan echoed from the corner. The fire, down to its last embers, hissed as though doused by unseen hands. In the half-dark, the man appeared again, the stranger she'd let in. But something about him was wrong. His body seemed to flicker, his outline bending against the air. He was shivering, eyes dark and distant. "I told you," he whispered, voice trembling with an emotion she couldn't name. "The woods keep those who enter with grief." Velda's knuckles whitened around the knife. "What are you talking about?" He stepped closer, the floor groaning beneath him. "You came here to run from pain. But the forest knows pain. It feeds on it." She shook her head violently. "You're not real." The man's expression hardened. "You think you can start over by burying what broke you? The woods don't let you hide, Velda. Not tonight." The candle flickered wildly as the wind screamed through the cracks. The room turned colder, every surface dripping with condensation. A faint sound rippled through the silence, a child's laughter. High-pitched, playful, out of place. Velda's eyes widened. "No, no." The laughter shifted to a sob, then a scream. The sound came from inside the walls. She backed away, pressing herself against the counter. The stranger's form seemed to pulse, as though something within him fought to emerge. He clutched his head, voice breaking. "They won't stop until you face it." "What do you mean?" she shouted over the storm. He looked up at her, eyes glowing faintly, not with light, but with memory. "You can't run from love, or from what you've done to it." Velda's grip tightened on the knife, her fear mixing with rage. "I didn't do anything wrong. He left me." The man's face twisted in agony. He began muttering, voice shifting rapidly between tones, some belonging to him, others sounding disturbingly familiar. "Why did you throw the ring? You said we'd be fine. You never listened, Velda, never listened." She staggered back, trembling. These were her own words, the exact ones she'd shouted during her last fight with her ex-husband, before she stormed out for good. Her pulse raced. "Stop it." But the voices only grew louder, echoing through the cabin until it sounded like 100 people were speaking all at once. "Stop it!" she screamed again, slamming the knife into the table. Silence. Only her ragged breathing remained. When she looked up, the stranger stood by the window again, still, calm, and unbearably sad. Velda whispered, "What are you?" He met her eyes, and for the first time, his voice was gentle. "Once, I was like you. I came to these woods, broken, angry, ready to start again. But grief kept me here. The forest doesn't release hearts that cling to pain." Velda shook her head, tears streaking down her cheeks. "You're lying. You're..." A gust of wind blew through the room, snuffing out the candle. Darkness swallowed everything. Velda felt something brush past her, soft, almost like a hand grazing her shoulder. The faint whisper returned, a woman's this time. "Let go, Velda, before it's too late." Her knees weakened. She pressed her hand against her stomach, feeling her baby kick, a reminder of life, of tomorrow, of hope. When the candle flickered back to life, the man was gone. But his voice lingered, faint and distant. "The forest tests those who still believe they're alone." Velda stared at the empty room, the walls still humming with faint whispers. She wasn't sure what was real anymore, but she knew this, something inside that cabin wanted her to face her past. And it wasn't finished yet. Velda sank to her knees, her breath shallow, the knife still trembling in her hand. The whispering walls quieted for a moment, leaving a hollow silence heavy enough to crush her thoughts. She pressed her palm against her chest, trying to steady her heartbeat, but what she heard next wasn't hers. It was faster, rhythmic, echoing through the air like a drumbeat. It took her a second to realize. It was her baby's heartbeat. The sound filled the cabin, steady and strong. It shouldn't have been possible to hear it like that, yet it pulsed through the floorboards, through the walls, through her. Every beat carried a strange echo, like another heartbeat answering it from the darkness. Velda stood slowly, her body trembling, her voice barely a whisper. "What do you want from me?" A low hum began to rise around her. The air thickened. The fire flared, casting twisted shapes across the walls. For a moment, the smoke formed the shape of the stranger's face, eyes hollow, mouth still, staring right at her. "You left him," the voice said. "You walked away before the end." Her jaw tightened. "I had to. He broke me. He didn't love me anymore." The floor groaned beneath her as the room began to pulse, like the cabin itself was breathing. Shadows bled down the walls, dripping like liquid darkness. The boards whispered her name, first softly, then louder. "Velda. Velda." She clamped her hands over her ears, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Stop. Stop saying my name." The stranger's voice came from behind her this time, closer than before. "You loved him once. Why did you bury it?" She turned, knife raised, but there was no one there, only a faint outline in the smoke where the fire burned low. Memories flooded her mind in flashes, her husband slamming the door, shouting words that cut deep, the night she packed her bags while 7 months pregnant, the silence that followed when no one came after her. "You think love dies when it hurts you," the voice said, softer now. "But love doesn't die. It waits." Velda's knees gave out. She sobbed into her hands. "He didn't wait. He moved on. He forgot us." The voice seemed to ache. "He didn't forget. He lost himself in guilt. The storm took him before he could make it right." Her head snapped up. "What storm?" The fire crackled once, and through the shifting smoke, she saw an image, faint, blurred, like a memory pressed into the air itself. A car skidding across a wet road. A man's terrified face. The same pale skin. The same hollow eyes. Velda's lips trembled. "No, no, it can't be." The stranger's voice whispered from all around. "I never made it home that night, Velda. The lake took me." She stumbled backward, the truth hitting her harder than the cold ever could. The man she had let in wasn't a stranger at all. It was him, her husband. His spirit, trapped in the woods, bound by grief just as she was. "Why are you here?" she choked out. "To see if you could forgive," he answered. "To see if you could let go." The room darkened completely. The windows frosted over, white spreading across the glass. Her reflection in the ice wasn't hers anymore. It showed her holding the baby in one arm and reaching toward a man standing in the snow. Velda's voice broke as she cried out, "I forgive you. I forgive you. Please, just let us be free." The walls trembled. The shadows began to recede, pulled back like a wave returning to sea. The fire roared to life, bathing the cabin in a golden glow. The air grew warm again. Velda dropped the knife. Her tears fell freely as she whispered, "You can rest now." For a moment, she felt a soft touch on her shoulder, warm, familiar, loving. Then it was gone. Silence returned. The only sound left was the steady, strong heartbeat of her unborn child. Velda looked toward the window, where the storm had finally stopped. The first light of dawn glowed faintly beyond the trees. She took a deep breath, her strength returning, her voice steady for the first time that night. "I'm not running anymore." She sat by the fire, holding her belly, whispering to the child inside. "We're going to be okay. I promise." But as she leaned back, eyes heavy, she didn't see the faint outline outside the frosted window. The shape of a man watching quietly, his face calm, peaceful, fading with the morning light. Velda closed her eyes. For the first time in years, she slept without fear. If you were Velda, could you forgive the past that haunts you? Tell us where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Tomorrow, I'll drop another story you won't want to miss. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories like this one. The clock on the mantel struck midnight. The sound echoed through the cabin like a cold hammer hitting stone. Velda's eyes snapped open. The fire was gone again. Only darkness remained, thick, heavy, alive with motion. Her breath turned white in the air as the temperature plummeted. A faint murmur rippled through the walls. At first, it sounded like the wind, but then it took form, words layered over each other, whispering through the wooden boards. "You're not worthy." The voice came again. Louder. "You failed him. You failed yourself." Velda stumbled to her feet, clutching her stomach as the pain surged. "Stop it!" she shouted into the emptiness. "Leave me alone." The walls shook. The old beams moaned. From every direction came pounding, soft, rhythmic blows, like hands beating against the cabin from outside. One after another. Dozens of them. Her pulse raced. She grabbed the knife from the table, holding it tight. The shadows in the corners thickened, forming vague human shapes, arms, heads, faces without eyes. They circled her, whispering the same words in 100 ghostly tones. In the middle of it all stood the man, the stranger who had appeared from the storm. His form flickered, no longer fully solid, his expression twisted into a mocking grin. But this time, his features had changed. Velda's breath caught. The face staring at her now was her ex-husband's. His mouth curled. "You thought leaving would set you free." Her knees weakened, but she forced herself to stand tall. "You're not real." The voice hissed through the air, close to her ear. "Neither was your love." Velda's grip on the knife tightened, but she didn't strike. Something inside her shifted, a spark that had been buried under fear and regret for too long. She took a single step forward, glaring through tears. "No," she said quietly. "You don't get to decide who I am anymore." The ghost's grin faltered. The whispers rose, angry, overlapping, clawing at her mind. "You're nothing. You're alone. You should have stayed." Velda pressed a hand against her chest. "I may be alone," she said, voice shaking but steady, "but I'm not broken. Not anymore." As her words filled the room, the temperature began to shift. The knife in her hand felt lighter. The fire pit suddenly sparked, a single flame bursting back to life without warning. The ghost recoiled. His form wavered like smoke in wind. Velda dropped the knife, letting it clatter to the floor. "You feed on guilt," she whispered. "But you can't feed on mine anymore." The fire blazed higher, brighter, painting her face in gold and red. The pounding stopped. The shadows pulled back, shrinking toward the edges of the cabin. Velda's breathing slowed. Her hands trembled, but this time it wasn't from fear, it was from release. For the first time since the knocking began, the cabin fell silent. The stranger's voice was faint now, almost human again. "You're stronger than the rest," it said softly. Velda looked toward the faint outline of the man's fading figure. "No," she answered. "I just stopped running." Outside, the wind began to calm. The snow fell gently again, no longer wild or violent. She knelt near the fire, pulling the blanket around her shoulders, holding her belly close. "We're almost through this," she whispered to the child within. "We're going to make it." The candle on the table flickered to life on its own, glowing steady. For the first time all night, the light didn't fade. The light from the fire cast long streaks across the floor as Velda leaned forward, exhausted but unyielding. The air had grown still again. Too still. Every breath sounded louder than it should. She felt watched, though no figure remained before her eyes. Then came the voice, quieter now, low and broken, almost mournful. "You can stop the pain, Velda. You don't have to fight anymore." Her body stiffened. She turned toward the doorway, where the faint outline of the man had returned, half visible, his body fading in and out like fog in a beam of light. His tone carried no threat this time. It was weary. Empty. "You've suffered enough," he said. "Let go. No more fear, no more loneliness. Just sleep." Velda pressed both hands against her belly. Her heartbeat thundered under her ribs, matched by the faint rhythm of her child's within. "If I stop," she whispered, "I take an innocent life with me. I won't do that." The ghost took a step closer. The shadows on the walls stretched with him. "You think you're protecting something," he said. "But what's left for you out there? Pain follows you like a shadow." She shook her head slowly. "Pain isn't all there is. My baby's not pain. My baby's my reason." The ghost's expression flickered, confusion first, then sorrow. The flames danced brighter, throwing fragments of light through the smoky air, and for a brief second she saw him as he once was, a man, alive, holding a small child in his arms. The image was faint, trembling like water disturbed by wind. Velda's voice softened. "You lost them, didn't you?" His gaze lifted, and his voice cracked. "The storm came too fast. My wife, my boy. I tried to reach them." His words trembled, fading in places. The fire wouldn't start. They froze before morning. Velda swallowed hard. The grief in his tone was raw, and suddenly the fear she'd felt for hours began to dissolve into something else. Pity. "You've been trapped here ever since," she murmured. He nodded. "Every Halloween night, I wander. I call for help. But no one ever opens the door." Her chest tightened. "Until tonight." The ghost lowered his head. "And I brought the storm with me. I brought the curse. I couldn't rest until someone saw me, until someone forgave me." Velda stood slowly, the knife long forgotten. She looked him straight in the eyes, voice calm but trembling with emotion. "You don't need forgiveness from them. You need peace. You need to forgive yourself." He took another step toward her, his face flickering like an image caught between two worlds. "How can I, when I failed the ones I loved most?" Velda's hand rose gently. "You didn't mean for it to happen. That's not evil, that's heartbreak. I know what it's like to lose love and blame yourself every day for it." She took a deep breath, eyes glistening in the firelight. "You don't have to stay here anymore. I forgive you." The ghost's expression softened. The wind outside began to howl, not with rage this time, but like a release. The fire flared brighter, nearly blinding, and the floorboards shuddered beneath her feet. Velda steadied herself, whispering a prayer, not for protection, but for mercy. "Let him go. Let us both go." The air rippled. A brilliant white light filled the cabin, pouring through every crack and seam. The sound of the wind rose to a scream, then stopped completely. When Velda opened her eyes, she was alone again. The cabin was quiet, the air warm, the fire steady. The faint smell of pine drifted through the room. On the chair by the hearth lay the man-soaked jacket, now dry, folded neatly as if left there by unseen hands. Velda knelt, pressing her hand against the wood floor. "Thank you," she whispered. Outside, the first hint of dawn touched the snow. The fire had burned down to soft orange coals, and Velda stirred from uneasy sleep. Her eyes fluttered open to the pale gold of dawn spilling through the frosted windowpane. The storm had passed. No more rattling wind, no whispers in the floorboards, just the quiet crackle of dying embers. She sat up slowly, hand instinctively finding her belly. The baby kicked faintly, alive, calm. For the first time in what felt like forever, her breath came steady. The cabin no longer felt heavy. It was just wood and silence again. Velda rose and stepped outside. The snow stretched unbroken in every direction, smooth and untouched, no footprints except her own leading from the door to the old truck. The air was still, almost reverent. She looked back at the cabin, once a place of terror, now simply, still. "Goodbye," she whispered. The word felt like a release. The truck's engine coughed to life, tires crunching over snow as she drove down the winding road toward Route 11. The world outside looked freshly made, washed clean by the storm. By the time she reached the small roadside diner, the sun had climbed high enough to scatter light across the chrome signs and the frost-tipped trees. She parked, stepped inside, and was greeted by the comforting clatter of dishes and the smell of coffee. A middle-aged waitress with tired eyes but a warm smile poured her a cup. "You're up early," the woman said. "Rough night?" Velda nodded faintly. "You could say that." The waitress chuckled. "Well, you're not the first one to wander out of those woods shaken. Folks around here say a man's spirit haunts that old stretch, the one near the ridge. Story goes he lost his wife and kid one Halloween. Never forgave himself. Every year, he comes back looking for peace." Velda froze, the spoon in her hand trembling. "They think it's true." The woman shrugged. "People swear they've seen him. Some say he's waiting for someone to forgive him so he can finally rest." Velda's eyes glistened as she stared out the diner window, the horizon washed in sunlight, snow glittering like glass. "Maybe he found what he was looking for," she said softly. The waitress smiled, oblivious to the weight behind the words. "Well, I hope so. No one deserves to wander forever." Velda smiled faintly in return, a tear escaping down her cheek. She took a slow sip of coffee, letting its warmth settle deep inside her. Out the window, a single bird crossed the sky, the only movement in a morning so still it felt sacred. Velda placed her hand gently over her belly and whispered, "We're free now." And somewhere beyond the woods, unseen but felt, a whisper of wind answered, gentle, final, at peace. Weeks passed, and the pain that once ruled Velda's heart began to loosen its grip. The nightmares faded, replaced by a quiet determination to start anew. She sold what little she had left, moved closer to town, and found a small apartment overlooking the lake. It wasn't much, but it was hers, and it was safe. Every morning, she'd stand by the window, one hand on her growing belly, watching the sunrise. Where fear once lived, peace began to grow. The cabin had taken something from her, yes, but it had also given her something far greater, the courage to forgive, and the strength to begin again. She didn't speak of that night to anyone. There was no need. Some truths belonged only to those who survived them. But sometimes, when the wind blew from the north, she would close her eyes and whisper a silent prayer, not for herself, but for the lost man whose soul had finally found its rest. The narrator's voice carries softly now, as if spoken through the morning air. Even when shadows close in, compassion remains our most powerful shield. Fear feeds on hatred, but love disarms it. It transforms what's broken into something worth living for. Velda's story reminds us that courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet choice made in the middle of the night, when no one's watching. A choice to protect, to forgive, to keep going. When the world turns cold, choose kindness. It might just save your soul. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. Your support helps us keep bringing you more powerful stories that remind us, even in darkness, there's always light. See you tomorrow with another story you won't want to miss.